The first words out of Patricia's mouth, my daughter's mother-in-law, when she saw me in Cartier, were, "Security. This woman is clearly unstable and doesn't belong here." I was standing at the jewelry counter, examining a $50,000 diamond necklace, when I heard that familiar laugh behind me. The laugh that used to fill my tiny apartment with joy, but now only filled me with dread. My daughter Joan was arm in arm with her mother-in-law Patricia, both dressed expensively, looking like they owned the world. Joan's eyes swept right past me like I was invisible. After 35 years of sacrifice, my own daughter couldn't even recognize her transformed mother. "Look at that pathetic old woman," Patricia said loudly, pointing directly at me. "Probably in here trying to return some fake jewelry she bought online. It's honestly disgusting when people like that pretend they belong in places like this." The sales associate looked mortified. Other customers were staring. But I remained perfectly calm, because I'd been preparing for this moment for months. "Excuse me," I said, turning to face them, my voice steady and clear. "I believe you're talking about me." The color drained from Joan's face so fast I thought she might faint. "Mom? Is that really you?" I paused, letting the tension build in the store. Patricia was shifting uncomfortably, and Joan looked like she was about to cry. Because what Joan didn't know, what Patricia couldn't have imagined, was that the broken woman they dismissed 6 months ago was about to become their worst nightmare. And it all started with a cheap bracelet and a Mother's Day I'll never forget. Before we dive into what happened that devastating Mother's Day, if you're here for the drama, the justice, and the complete transformation of a woman who refused to stay down, hit that subscribe button and tell me in the comments where you're watching from. Trust me, you won't want to miss what happens next, and I promise you, the revenge gets even sweeter. 6 months ago, I woke up on Mother's Day with butterflies in my stomach. I'd been planning for weeks, saving every penny from my part-time job at the grocery store. I had wrapped Joan's gift in beautiful paper, a silk scarf I'd seen her admire months earlier. And for Collins, my 12-year-old grandson, I'd bought the video game he'd been begging for. $300 total. Money I didn't really have, but it was Mother's Day, and I wanted to spoil the two people who meant everything to me. I cleaned my tiny apartment until it sparkled, made Joan's favorite lemon cake from scratch, and set the table with my best dishes, the ones I'd bought for her wedding that she'd never used. I kept checking the clock, my heart racing with excitement. This was going to be perfect. When Joan walked in with Patricia, I should have known something was wrong. They were both carrying enormous gift bags, the expensive kind from high-end stores. Joan barely hugged me, and Collins mumbled a quick, "Hi, Grandma," before gluing himself to his phone. "Mom, we can't stay long," Joan said, not even looking at my beautifully set table. "We have reservations at the country club with Mason's family." But Patricia, oh Patricia, she was practically glowing. "Joan, darling, should we do the gifts now? I'm so excited to see what you got me," Patricia said. I watched in complete shock as Joan pulled out a velvet box. Inside was a diamond ring that caught the light like a small sun. "Patricia, you've been like a mother to me. Thank you for raising such an incredible son." $20,000. I found out later it cost $20,000. Then came the cruise tickets. "A month in Europe, Patricia, you deserve it after everything you've done for our family." Patricia actually teared up. "Oh, Joan, you're the daughter I never had. This is too much." The daughter she never had. The words hit me like a physical blow. Then Joan turned to me, almost like an afterthought. "Oh, Mom, I almost forgot. Collins picked this out for you." She handed me a small plastic bag from a dollar store. Inside was a plastic bracelet with fake gems that looked like something from a child's dress-up box. $5, maybe less. "It's pretty, right, Mom?" Joan said, but she wasn't even looking at me. She was helping Patricia put on her new ring. I tried to put the bracelet on, and it snapped immediately. The plastic was so cheap it couldn't even handle being worn once. I held the broken pieces in my palm, staring at them while Patricia showed off her $20,000 ring to Collins. "Joan," I said quietly, Patricia raised such a wonderful son? Well, yes, Joan said, like it was obvious. Look at Mason. He's successful, kind, and generous. That's all Patricia's doing. I looked at my daughter, the child I'd raised alone after her father died when she was only 5. I remembered those nights when she had nightmares, and I'd hold her until dawn. I remembered working double shifts at the hospital, mopping floors and cleaning bedpans so I could afford to send her to private school. I remembered the college application we filled out together at my kitchen table, the wedding I paid for with my entire savings, the house down payment I gave them from my retirement fund. But according to Joan, Patricia deserved all the credit for the man Mason became. Not me. Not the woman who had sacrificed everything. I caught Collins rolling his eyes when he thought I wasn't looking. My own grandson was embarrassed by me. In my own home, wearing my broken $5 bracelet, I had become invisible. Let me tell you how I got to that place. Let me tell you about the 35 years I spent building a daughter who would one day replace me with her mother-in-law. But first, let me tell you about the other betrayal that prepared me for this one. The one that taught me how cruel family could really be. I was 30 years old when Joan's father died in a car accident. 30 years old with a 5-year-old daughter and no life insurance. But that's not the worst part of the story. The worst part is what happened at his funeral. Logan's family had never liked me. I wasn't for money, I didn't have connections, and I worked as a secretary instead of having some prestigious career. They tolerated me because Logan loved me, but they made it clear I wasn't really one of them. The day after Logan's funeral, his brother Marcus knocked on my door. "Megan," he said, "we need to talk about Logan's things." I invited him in, thinking he wanted some keepsake to remember his brother by. Instead, he handed me a list. "These are Logan's valuable possessions," he said. "His watch, his coin collection, his books, his tools. The family thinks they should stay in the family." I stared at the list. It was everything Logan owned that had any worth. "Marcus, these are Joan's inheritance. Logan would want her to have them. Joan's just a child, she doesn't understand their value. We'll keep them safe until she's older." But I knew the truth. Once they took Logan's things, Joan would never see them again. Just like I'd never be welcomed into their family gatherings again. "No," I said firmly. "These stay with Joan and me." Marcus's face hardened. "Megan, you need to be practical. You have no job, no money, no prospects. Joan deserves a stable home with people who can provide for her. We're willing to take her." They wanted to take my daughter. They wanted to raise her while I disappeared into poverty and obscurity. "Get out," I said. "Get out of my house right now." "You're making a mistake," Marcus said as he left. "You'll regret this." And for years, I thought maybe I had made a mistake. I worked 3 jobs to keep us afloat. I went without meals so Joan could eat. I wore the same clothes for years while making sure Joan had everything she needed. I watched other children get help from grandparents and aunts and uncles, while Joan and I faced everything alone. Logan's family never called, never visited, never acknowledged Joan's birthdays or achievements. They wrote us off completely because I wouldn't let them take my daughter and Logan's possessions. But I survived it. I raised Joan alone and I was proud of what we'd built together. I thought I'd learned from that experience. I thought I'd taught Joan about loyalty, about family, about never abandoning the people who love you. I was wrong. I worked double shifts at Methodist Hospital, mopping floors and cleaning rooms. My hands were raw from bleach, my back ached constantly, but I made sure Joan never went without. Private school, because the public schools in our area weren't good enough. Piano lessons because she showed interest. Summer camps because other kids got to go. I turned down 3 marriage proposals over the years. Good men who could have given us security, who could have given me companionship. But they all wanted me to prioritize them, and I couldn't do that. Joan needed me. Joan came first. Joan always came first. When she got into college, I took out loans I couldn't afford. When she wanted to study abroad, I worked weekends at a second job. When she got married, I gave her my entire life savings, $40,000, for her dream wedding. When she and Mason needed a house down payment, I mortgaged my own home to help them. I never asked for anything in return. I never complained. I never made her feel guilty for any of it. I just loved her, supported her, and believed that someday she'd understand what I'd sacrificed for her. I told Joan about her father's family, about how they'd tried to take her away from me, about how we'd survived together despite their abandonment. Family isn't about blood, I used to tell her. It's about who shows up for you when life gets hard. I thought she understood. I thought the lesson had sunk in. Then Mason's mother, Patricia, entered our lives. Patricia was everything I wasn't. Wealthy, sophisticated, well-traveled. She'd raised Mason with nannies and private tutors while I was raising Joan with love and determination. She had opinions about everything. Joan's hair, her clothes, her parenting style. And Joan, my independent, strong-willed daughter, hung on every word. Patricia thinks I should redecorate the living room. Patricia says Collins needs more structure. Patricia invited us to the country club again. Slowly, I watched my daughter slip away. Patricia started joining us for family dinners, then hosting them at her house instead. She took Joan shopping, to the spa, on weekend trips. She had money to offer experiences I never could. But the worst part wasn't being replaced. The worst part was being erased. Joan stopped asking my opinion about Collins's schooling. Patricia thinks private school would be better. Joan stopped inviting me to family events. It's just a small gathering at Patricia's. Joan stopped calling me for advice. I already talked to Patricia about it. I became the old woman who was tolerated, not treasured. The grandmother who was invited out of obligation, not love. The mother who was slowly but surely being written out of her own family's story. The irony wasn't lost on me. Logan's family had tried to take Joan away from me, with threats and demands. Patricia was doing it with kindness and money, and she was succeeding where they had failed. The final blow came 3 weeks after that disastrous Mother's Day. Joan sat me down in my own living room and said the words that nearly broke me completely. "Mom, Mason and I have been talking. We think you'd be happier in a senior living community. You know, with people your own age. You seem lonely here." Lonely. I was lonely because they'd abandoned me, just like Logan's family had abandoned us 30 years earlier. Patricia found this wonderful place about an hour away. It's very nice, and we could visit on weekends. An hour away, where I'd be completely out of the picture. It would be better for Collins, too. He needs to focus on his studies, and having his grandmother so close is, well, it's confusing for him. He doesn't know which advice to follow. I looked at my daughter, really looked at her, and I saw Patricia's influence in every word. This wasn't Joan talking. This was Patricia, speaking through my daughter's mouth. "You want me to move away so Patricia can have my family," I said quietly. "Mom, don't be dramatic. Patricia isn't replacing you. She's more equipped to help with certain things. She understands Mason's world better." Patricia was standing in my kitchen doorway and I caught her smile. A small, satisfied smile that said everything. She'd won. She'd taken my daughter, my grandson, my place in the family, and now she was taking my physical presence too. In that moment, I felt like that 30-year-old widow again, being told I wasn't good enough, wasn't worthy enough, wasn't family enough to keep what was mine. That night, after they left, I sat in my apartment holding the pieces of that broken plastic bracelet. I realized I had become exactly what that bracelet was: cheap, disposable, easily broken, and quickly forgotten. But here's what none of them knew. Here's what Patricia's smug smile couldn't have predicted. I wasn't going to senior living. I wasn't going to disappear quietly. I was going to vanish completely. And when I came back, everything would be different. Because sometimes the only way to show people what they've lost is to take yourself away completely. And sometimes, just sometimes, life gives you the tools to come back stronger than anyone ever imagined. The day after Joan told me to move to senior living, I saw an ad in the newspaper. Companion caregiver wanted for elderly woman. Live-in position. References required. Something about it called to me. Maybe it was desperation, maybe it was fate, but I called the number. The lawyer who answered was surprised that I was interested. "Most people don't want this job," he said. "Mrs. Whitmore is particular. She's 85, very wealthy, and she's been through 12 caregivers in 2 years. She doesn't trust easily." Eleanor Whitmore lived in a mansion that took my breath away. When I met her, she was sitting in a wheelchair by a window, staring out at gardens that hadn't been tended in months. She was thin, frail, and her eyes held the same loneliness I'd been feeling. "Another one," she said when she saw me. "How long before you steal something and leave?" "I'm not here to steal anything," I told her. "I'm here because I understand what it feels like to be thrown away by the people who should love you most." Something in her expression shifted. For the first time in months, someone was being honest with her. Eleanor had been abandoned by her family years ago. Her children only called when they needed money, her grandchildren didn't visit, and her late husband's relatives were circling like vultures, waiting for her to die. She'd built walls around herself, pushing away anyone who tried to get close. But I didn't try to fix her or change her. I just sat with her. I read to her, helped her with her medications, and listened to her stories about traveling the world with her late husband. Slowly, those walls started coming down. She told me about her late husband's business empire, about the investments in properties scattered around the world. $12 million, she said one day, matter-of-factly, and not one person who cares if I live or die. I cared. For the first time in months, I had purpose again. Eleanor wasn't my daughter, but she needed me in a way Joan never had. She appreciated my company, valued my opinions, and treated me like family. We spent hours talking about everything and nothing. She taught me about art, about wine, about the difference between old money and new money. I taught her about resilience, about finding joy in small things, about what real family should look like. Eleanor also had a story about family betrayal. Her own children had tried to have her declared incompetent when she refused to give them early access to their inheritance. "They said I was too old to manage my own money," she told me. "They hired lawyers, doctors, anyone who would say I wasn't capable. They wanted me locked away so they could take everything." "What did you do?" I asked. "I fought back," she said with a fierce smile. "I proved my competency, fired my ungrateful children as beneficiaries, and decided to live my life on my own terms. But it left me so lonely, Megan. So afraid to trust anyone." We understood each other in a way that went beyond words. We were both women who had given everything to family, only to be discarded when we were no longer convenient. When Eleanor's health started declining, I was there. When she couldn't sleep because of the pain, I sat with her through the night. When she was scared about dying alone, I held her hand and promised I wouldn't leave. She died peacefully on a Tuesday morning, holding my hand, with sunlight streaming through her bedroom window. Her last words were, "Thank you for loving me when no one else would." The will reading was a week later. I sat in the lawyer's office, expecting maybe a small thank you gift. Eleanor's estranged son and daughter were there, along with several other relatives who'd suddenly appeared after years of absence. "To my children and family members," the lawyer read, "who contacted me only when they needed money, I leave $1 each." The room erupted. Eleanor's son started shouting about contesting the will. "To Megan Thompson, who showed me what real love looks like, who cared for me without expecting anything in return, who was the daughter I never had, I leave my entire estate, $12 million, all properties, investments, and personal belongings." I couldn't breathe. $12 million. The room was spinning. "She said you were the daughter she never had," the lawyer explained later. "She changed her will 2 months before she died. She wanted to make sure you'd never have to depend on anyone again." Eleanor's family tried to contest it, of course. They hired lawyers, made accusations, and claimed I'd manipulated a dying woman. But Eleanor had been careful. She documented everything, recorded videos explaining her decision, and made sure the will was ironclad. The money changed everything, but not in the way you might think. For the first time in my life, I had choices. I could travel, I could buy beautiful clothes, I could live anywhere I wanted. But more than that, I had power. The power to decide who deserved my time and attention. I spent the next year learning how to navigate my new world. I hired a financial advisor, bought an elegant condo overlooking the city, and slowly began to understand what Eleanor had been trying to teach me. I deserved respect, I deserved love. I deserved to be treated as valuable. And then I decided to test something. I wanted to see if my family would reach out to me, if they'd notice I was gone, if they'd miss me at all. I waited. I watched their social media from a distance. I said nothing about Eleanor or the inheritance. They didn't even notice I was gone. That's when I started planning my little visit to Cartier. You see, I wanted Joan to see me as I truly was. Not the desperate, needy mother she'd grown tired of, but the woman I'd always been underneath. Strong, valuable, worthy of respect. Back in that jewelry store, where Joan and Patricia saw me buying a $50,000 diamond necklace, watching Joan's confused face as I handed over my black American Express card, I felt something I hadn't felt in years. Power. Mom, I don't understand, Joan kept saying. Where did this money come from? How do you have a card like that? Patricia, meanwhile, was backing away, clearly realizing she'd just insulted someone who could afford a $50,000 necklace. Her name is Eleanor Whitmore, I said calmly. She needed a companion in her final months, and I was there for her. Unlike some families, she appreciated loyalty. Joan's eyes went wide. You were working as a caregiver? Mom, why didn't you tell me? When exactly would I have told you, Joan? Between your cruise planning sessions with Patricia and your ring shopping expeditions? You made it very clear I wasn't part of your family anymore. The sales associate was watching this drama unfold with obvious fascination. Other customers had stopped pretending not to listen. She probably scammed the rich woman, Patricia said desperately. Rich old women are targets for these kinds of schemes. I turned to look at Patricia directly. Are you suggesting that I'm a scammer, or are you just uncomfortable with the fact that the poor old woman you were mocking can afford to buy this entire store? The manager appeared, drawn by the commotion. Mrs. Thompson, he said warmly, your necklace is ready. Should we have it delivered to your usual address? My usual address. Because I was now a VIP customer. Because I'd been shopping here regularly for months, building the wardrobe and jewelry collection of a woman who refused to be invisible anymore. Joan looked like she'd been slapped. You've been shopping here for months? I've been living my life, Joan. The life I chose after you chose Patricia over me. That's when I pulled out my phone. Speaking of choices, Joan, I've been watching yours very carefully. I scrolled through her Instagram feed, showing her the screen. Here's a post from Collins's birthday last month. So grateful for my amazing mother-in-law Patricia for helping plan the perfect party. Not one mention of me, even though I sent Collins a gift that he never acknowledged. Joan's face went pale. Mom, Here's another one from Mason's promotion dinner. Patricia always knows the right advice to give. So lucky to have her in our lives. I wasn't even invited to that dinner, was I? I kept scrolling. Oh, and here's my personal favorite, family photo from our weekend getaway. There you are, Mason, Collins, and Patricia. One big, happy family. I counted 47 family photos on your social media over the past year, Joan. Guess how many include me? Stop, Joan whispered. 0. The answer is 0. I put my phone away. But that's not even the worst part. You want to know what really broke my heart? I looked directly at Collins, who had been hiding behind his phone this entire time. Tell your mother what you told your teacher about your real grandmother, Collins. Collins's face crumpled. Grandma? Tell her, I said firmly. I told Mrs. Peterson that Grandma Patricia was my real grandmother because she takes me to cool places and buys me things and you just give me hugs and make cookies. Collins started crying. I told everyone at school that my other grandmother didn't matter anymore. The sound Joan made was like something breaking inside her chest. That's when I knew, I said quietly. That's when I realized I hadn't just been replaced, I'd been erased. My own grandson was ashamed of me. Mom, I didn't know he said that, Joan sobbed. I didn't mean for any of this to happen. But you let it happen every day, I replied. Every time you chose Patricia's opinion over mine, every time you excluded me from family decisions, every time you posted about your amazing mother-in-law while treating your actual mother like a burden. You let it happen, Joan. Patricia was frantically trying to back out of the store, but I wasn't done. And you, I said, turning to face Patricia. You knew exactly what you were doing. You systematically worked to turn my daughter against me, to make my grandson ashamed of me, to push me out of my own family. You thought you'd won, didn't you? Before we continue with what happened next, have you ever been replaced by someone else in your own family? Have you ever watched someone else get the love and respect that should have been yours? Drop your story in the comments because you're not alone in this. And if you're invested in seeing how this confrontation ends, if you want to see what happens when years of suppressed hurt finally explodes into the open, hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications. Trust me, what I'm about to drop will leave you speechless. The truth is, I was done. Done being the grateful mother who accepted scraps. Done being the grandmother who smiled while being humiliated. Done being the woman who sacrificed everything and got nothing in return. Joan, I said, my voice steady and clear. You've made your choice. You chose Patricia over the woman who raised you alone, who worked 3 jobs to give you everything, who gave you her life savings for your wedding, who mortgaged her home so you could buy yours. You chose a woman who's known you for 5 years over the woman who's loved you for 35. Mom, please, Joan begged. I can fix this. We can go back to how things were. No, I said firmly. We can't, because I'm not the same woman who let you walk all over her. I'm not the woman who accepted your charity visits and your guilt gifts. I'm not the woman who smiled while you gave your love to someone else. I picked up my shopping bag with the $50,000 necklace inside. I'm the woman Eleanor saw when she looked at me. I'm the woman who deserves respect, appreciation, and genuine love. And if you can't see that, if you can't value that, then you don't deserve to have me in your life. But the money, Joan said desperately. Mom, we're family. We can work this out. Ah, there it is, I said. The money. That's what this is really about, isn't it? You ignored me when I was poor and struggling, but now that I have money, suddenly I'm worth fighting for. The devastation on Joan's face told me everything I needed to know. I'm done, Joan. I'm done being your backup plan, your obligation, your burden. I'm going to live my life for me now. I'm going to travel the world like Eleanor wanted me to. I'm going to donate to charities in her name. I'm going to surround myself with people who actually value my presence. What about Collins? Joan asked weakly. Collins made his choice too. He has his real grandmother, Patricia. He doesn't need the grandmother who embarrasses him. I walked toward the door, then stopped and turned back one final time. I raised you to be better than this, Joan. I raised you to be loyal, grateful, and loving. I thought if I loved you enough, sacrificed enough, gave enough, you'd never treat me the way your father's family treated me after he died. But I was wrong. You became exactly the kind of person who throws away someone who loves them for someone who can do more for them. As I walked out of that store, I heard Joan calling my name. But I didn't turn around. Patricia was standing frozen, realizing that her victory had just turned into her worst nightmare. Because now everyone knew what she'd done. And more importantly, everyone knew she'd lost. The months that followed were the most peaceful of my life. I moved into a beautiful penthouse overlooking the lake. I traveled to Italy, to France, to all the places Eleanor had told me about. I started a foundation in Eleanor's name to help elderly people who'd been abandoned by their families. Joan called constantly at first. She sent flowers, cards, desperate text messages. She even showed up at my building, but security turned her away. She posted apologies on social media, but I'd blocked her on everything. The truth is, I didn't want to punish Joan forever. But I needed her to understand that love isn't something you can turn on and off based on convenience. Respect isn't something you can take back once you've thrown it away. And family isn't something you can replace and then expect to reclaim when it's beneficial. 6 months later, I heard through mutual friends that Patricia's influence in Joan's life had completely crumbled. Once people knew what she'd done to me, they started questioning everything about her. Joan's marriage was struggling because Mason was horrified by how his wife had treated her mother. Collins was in therapy because he was racked with guilt about what he'd said. I felt sorry for them, in a way, but not sorry enough to go back to being their emotional punching bag. Today, I'm sitting in my beautiful home, wearing Eleanor's pearls, planning my next trip to New Zealand. I volunteer at the Children's Hospital. I've made genuine friends who value me for who I am, and I wake up every morning knowing that I matter. I spent 35 years being the mother I thought Joan needed. Now I'm being the woman I always was underneath. Strong, independent, worthy of love and respect. Did I lose my family? Yes. But what I gained was something far more valuable. I gained myself. And if Joan ever truly understands what she lost, if she ever becomes the woman I raised her to be, maybe someday we can rebuild something real. But it will be on my terms this time, with my boundaries, and with the full knowledge that I don't need her love to be complete. I already am. The broken plastic bracelet taught me something important. When something breaks that easily, it was never meant to last. But real love, real respect, real family, those things are built to endure. And I deserve nothing less than something built to last. If you enjoyed this story of triumph over family betrayal, make sure to hit that subscribe button and ring the notification bell so you never miss our latest uploads. I'd love to know where you're watching from in the comments below. And tell me if you've ever experienced something similar with your own family.